Lichfield Cathedral. Lichfield Cathedral in Lichfield, Staffordshire, England, is the only medieval English cathedral with 3 spires. The Diocese of Lichfield covers Staffordshire, much of Shropshire, and parts of the Black Country and West Midlands. The current Bishop of Lichfield, Michael Ipgrave, was appointed in 2016. Overview. The cathedral is dedicated to St. Chad and St. Mary. Its internal length is 113 m 371 ft, and the breadth of the nave is 21 m 69 ft. The central spire is 77 m 253 ft high, and the western spires are about 58 m 190 ft. The stone is sandstone and came from a quarry on the south side of Lichfield. The walls of the nave lean outwards slightly due to the weight of stone used in the ceiling vaulting, some 200–300 tons of which was removed during renovation work to prevent the walls leaning further. Lichfield suffered severe damage during the English Civil War, in which all of the stained glass was destroyed. In spite of this, the windows of the Lady Chapel contain some of the finest medieval Flemish painted glass in existence. Dating from the 1530s, it came from the Abbey of Herkenrode in Belgium in 1801, having been purchased by Brooke Boothby when that abbey was dissolved during the Napoleonic Wars. It was sold on to the cathedral for the same price. There are also some fine windows by Betton and Evans 1819, and many fine late 19th century windows, particularly those by Charles Eamer Kemp. The Lichfield Gospels, also known as the Book of Chad, are the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, and the early part of Luke, written mainly in Latin with some text in early Welsh and dating from around 730. There were originally 2 volumes, but one went missing around the time of the English Civil War. It is closely related in style to the Lindisfarne Gospels. The manuscript is on display in the chapter house from Easter to Christmas. The cathedral close is one of the most complete in the country and includes a medieval courtyard which once housed the men of the choir. The 3 spires are often referred to as the Ladies of the Veil. History of the cathedral. Early history and elevation to archbishopric. When Chad was made Bishop of Mercia in 669, he moved his see from Repton to Lichfield, possibly because this was already a holy site as the scene of martyrdoms during the Roman period. The first cathedral to be built on the present site was in 700, when Bishop had built a new church to house the bones of St. Chad, which had become a sacred shrine to many pilgrims when he died in 672. Offa, king of Mercia, seemed to resent his own bishops paying allegiance to the Archbishop of Canterbury in Kent, who, whilst under Offa's control, was not of his own kingdom of Mercia. Offa therefore created his own archbishopric in Lichfield, who presided over all the bishops from the Humber to the Thames. All this began in 786 with the consent of Pope Adrian. Pope's official representatives were received warmly by Offa and were present at the Council of Chelsea 787, often called the Contentious Synod, where it was proposed that the Archbishopric of Canterbury be restricted in order to make way for Offa's new archbishop. It was vehemently opposed, but Offa and the papal representatives defeated Archbishop Jeanbert, installing Higbert as the new Archbishop of Lichfield. Pope Adrian sent Higbert the pallium, denoting his support for this move. In gratitude, Offa promised to send an annual shipment of gold to the Pope for alms and supplying the lights in St. Peter's Church in Rome. However, the Archbishopric of Lichfield lasted for only 16 years, ending soon after Offa's death, when it was restored to Archbishop Ethelherd of Canterbury. Starting in 1085 and continuing through the 12th century, the original wooden Saxon church was replaced by a Norman cathedral made from stone, and this was in turn replaced by the present Gothic cathedral begun in 1195. It was completed by the building of the Lady Chapel in the 1330s. The choir dates from 1200, the transepts from 1220 to 1240, and the nave was started in 1260. The octagonal chapter house, which was completed in 1249 and is one of the most beautiful parts of the cathedral with some charming stone carvings, houses an exhibition of the cathedral's greatest treasure, the Lichfield Gospels, an 8th-century illuminated manuscript. Devastation of the English Civil War. There were 3 great sieges of Lichfield during the period 1643–1646. As the cathedral close was surrounded by a ditch and defensive walls, it made a natural fortress. The cathedral authorities with a certain following were for Charles I, but the townsfolk generally sided with Parliament, and this led to the fortification of the close in 1643. Robert Greville, 2nd Baron Brooke, led an assault against it, but was killed by a deflected bullet from John Dyot, known as Dumb because he was a deaf-mute, who along with his brother Richard Dyot had taken up a position on the battlements of the central cathedral spire on 2 March 1643. Brooke's deputy John Gell took over the siege. The royalist garrison surrendered to Gell 2 days later. In April of the same year, 1643, Prince Rupert led a royalist expeditionary force from Oxford to recapture Lichfield. The siege started on 8 April. During the second assault, Rupert's engineers detonated what is thought to be the first explosive mine to be used in England to breach the defences. Unable to defend the close, Colonel Russell, the parliamentary commander of the garrison, surrendered on terms to Rupert on 21 April. The cathedral suffered extensive damage. The central spire was demolished, the roofs ruined, and all the stained glass smashed. Bishop Hacket began the restoration of the cathedral in the 1660s, aided by substantial funds donated by the restored monarch, but it was not until the 19th century that the damage caused by the Civil War was fully repaired. Up until the 19th century, on top of an ornamented gable, between the 2 spires, stood a colossal figure of Charles Roman II by William Wilson. Today it stands just outside the south doors. Victorian Restoration. Although the 18th century was a golden age for the city of Lichfield, it was a period of decay for the cathedral. The 15th century library, on the north side of the nave, was pulled down and the books moved to their present location above the chapter house. Most of the statues on the west front were removed and the stonework covered with Roman cement. At the end of the century, James Wyatt organized some major structural work. Francis Edgington painted the east window and was commissioned by the chapter to do other work in the cathedral. The ornate west front was extensively renovated in the Victorian era by George Gilbert Scott. It includes a remarkable number of ornate carved figures of kings, queens, and saints, working with original materials where possible and creating fine new imitations and additions when the originals were not available. Between 1877 and 1884, the empty niches on the west front were given new statues, most carved by Robert Bridgman of Lichfield. The statue of Queen Victoria on the north side of the central window was carved by her daughter, Princess Louise. Wyatt's choir screen had utilized medieval stonework, which Scott in turn used to create the clergy's seats in the sanctuary. The new metal screen by Francis Skidmore and John Burney Phillip to designs by Scott himself is a triumph of high Victorian art, as are the fine Minton's tiles in the choir, inspired by the medieval ones found in the choir foundations and still seen in the library. Lichfield Angel. In February 2003, an 8th-century sculpted panel of the Archangel Gabriel was discovered under the nave of the cathedral. The 600-tall panel is carved from limestone and originally was part of a stone chest, which is thought to have contained the relics of St. Chad. The panel was broken into 3 parts but was still otherwise intact and had traces of red pigment from the period. The pigments on the Lichfield Angel correspond closely to those of the Lichfield Gospels, which have been dated to around 730 AD. The Angel was first unveiled to the public in 2006, when visitor numbers to the cathedral trebled. After being taken to Birmingham for 18 months for examination, it is now exhibited in the cathedral. COVID-19 pandemic. On Friday, 15 January 2021, while closed to services during the COVID-19 pandemic, Lichfield Cathedral became the first place of worship in England to accommodate the vaccination program in the United Kingdom. Dean and Chapter. As of 7 December 2020. Dean Adrian Dorber since 24 September 2005 installation. Canon Precentor Andrew Stead Canon since September 2013. Precentor since Easter 2017. Previously Treasurer and School Chaplain. Canon Custos Jan McFarlane Canon Residentiary and Honorary Assistant Bishop since 3 April 2020. Canon Chancellor Gregory Platten since 5 July 2020 collation. Canon Treasurer vacant since Stead's 2017 move. The additional role of Vice Dean has been vacant since Anthony Moore's resignation in 2017. Lay Chapter. Brian Ramsell. Anne Parkhill. Margaret Harding. Peter Durrant. Music. Organists. Notable organists of Lichfield Cathedral include the 17th-century composer Michael East and the musical educator and choral conductor William Henry Harris, who conducted at the coronations of both Elizabeth Roman II and George VI. Priest Vicars Choral. The Precentor's Vicar vacant. The Dean's Vicar vacant. The Chancellor's Vicar vacant. The Treasurer's Vicar vacant. Lay Vicars Choral and Choristers. The choir has 9 lay vicars choral and up to 18 boy choristers and up to 18 girl choristers. Ariels. Chad of Mercia, Bishop of the Northumbrians, later Bishop of the Mercians and Lindsey people, and saint originally buried in the Church of St. Mary, which became part of the cathedral. Geoffrey de Muschamp, Bishop of Coventry 1198–1208. William de Cornhill, Bishop of Coventry 1214–1223. Alexander de Stavenby, Bishop of Coventry and Lichfield 1224–1238. Hugh de Pachel, Bishop of Coventry and Lichfield 1239–1241. Roger Wessingham, Bishop of Coventry and Lichfield 1245–1256. Walter Langton, Lord High Treasurer of England and Bishop of Coventry and Lichfield 1296–1321. Henry Paget, 1st Marquess of Anglesey, KG GCB GCH PC 1768–1854, cavalry officer during the Battle of Waterloo. George Augustus Selwyn, Bishop of Lichfield 1868–1878. 1st Anglican Bishop of New Zealand 1841–1858 and Primate of New Zealand 1858–1868.